I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. This week on the Rough Draft Diaries Revisit, we're returning to an episode from February of 2017. It's Robert Smith, who's the founder of the African American Legacy Project. But if you didn't catch that first interview, just a little bit of background first. The African American Legacy Project has been documenting and preserving the history of Northwest Ohio's African American community since 2004. Now, the AALP has multiple programs to achieve this goal, but they also have a physical space, a museum, where they can showcase these artifacts of African American history. Like any museum during this time of quarantine, things have changed a bit, but Robert is still dedicated to the cause.
We've been diligent, one could say vigilant, in our effort to collect stories, those human stories, to share with people. And we got great stories. Want to celebrate Mr. Art Tatum in an extraordinary way. That almost got set aside, but we're back on track. There are other things that we intend to do. Not easy. I don't think that I want to create a picture that things have been great. You know, we had to cut back on staff, but we had people come in and support us. I mean, everything from grounds to helping us get information out and willingness to help share stories. So COVID will let you know what you were made of. It's pretty tragic what's happened, but it didn't just impact the African American Legacy Project. COVID has impacted all of us.
On top of a pandemic, there's another crisis that's impacting the United States right now. Protests in every single state have been organized over the past 2 weeks calling for justice and police reform over the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man killed by a white police officer as he knelt on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes. In the same way that I asked Robert how he was maneuvering a pandemic, I repeated the question, asking him how he was maneuvering this time of political unrest.
I'm great. I have been through this. I'm not saying that I have an armor. I'm saying just yesterday, Reverend Al Sharpton said there will be a march on Washington on August 28th. I'm going to be there. I'm doing great. I understand who I am. I'm very comfortable with me. I'm not so comfortable with the way the world treats people who look like me. I'm great.
If you think Robert sounds cheerful, almost removed from the trauma of the past 2 weeks, I think you're missing the bigger picture. Robert, in his work with the African American Legacy Project, documents story after story after story of the resilience of the African American community. The protests happening today are not new, but instead connect to a movement that was happening long before Robert was born and then throughout his life here in Toledo. His response is a simple understanding that the work is not done.
The short answer is same problem, different faces. The long answer is if as a country, not just a community, if as a country we want to continue to excel and grow as people, as human beings, we need to be able to figure this out. If we are to coexist, we need to be able to figure this out. We cannot continue to go back and forth. The ugly is the ugly. I don't turn my back on anyone, but it's painful. It's sad. It's reality.
So reality for Robert Smith looks pretty similar to what it looked like before the protests happened. The mission to collect images, newspapers, memorabilia, cultural symbols, a definitive historical record documenting the African American experience in Northwest Ohio continues.
Well, we want to be as active as possible. We really believe in this. You're talking to a Vietnam vet who came home to a different circumstance, but we remain cautiously optimistic. But there are some realities. I find myself trying to quantify someone else's behavior, and that's not a good position for me to be in. Truthfully, much of what we are trying to do, our mission has been to uplift community and to tell the kinds of stories to people and about people, to share, to educate, to hopefully get the world to see the stories are the same, regardless of the color of a person's skin. Someone who works hard to achieve, someone who got lost along the way and came back, someone who loved their mother tremendously. The stories are the same. So the reason why we took up this mission, if you will, is to share those stories, to begin to try to find some common ground. Nothing has changed from what we originally intended. I'm honored to serve. I won't change who I am. We have work to do.
We had so many stories of the resilience of the African American community from Robert in our last interview that we actually had to create an extra segment to share all of them with you. This time I asked Robert for yet another story to share, but he instead decided to nominate someone from the community to share their story in place of his voice. He nominated Mr. and Mrs. Bell, so stay tuned for that. That'll be the next episode of the Rough Draft Diaries. For now, I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening.